Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the show, should downtown streets belong to people or to traffic?
Northville's legal fight over outdoor dining asks a bigger question about how we shape public space.
Plus, comedian Nicole Milnick joins us today to talk about finding the punchline in everyday life.
She's headlining WDET's comedy series, What's So Funny About Detroit, happening next week.
And we'll hear how other Detroit comics see the city through humor, what they find absurd, and what they find inspiring, and why laughter feels like survival here.
But first, the race to electric vehicles is happening. That may be surprising for some when considering our political climate. President Donald Trump has reversed course on the electricity-forward Biden years. His new budget law will phase out tax credits for electric vehicles by the end of September. And congressional Republicans eliminated penalties for companies that don't comply with fuel economy standards. Now, those standards encouraged automakers to produce electric vehicles to offset the sale of gas-powered cars that emitted too much dirty energy. But despite all this, Ford announced 2 weeks ago that it was charging ahead with its EV plans. The company announced the creation of a new electric vehicle production system to produce EVs more efficiently. Ford hopes to bring a $30,000 midsize electric pickup to market in 2 years. So how might this plan turn out? And can Ford and other American automakers outcompete China on EVs? To discuss this and more, we have John McElroy here. John broadcasts 3 radio segments on WWJ, writes a blog for Autoblog, and has a monthly column for Ward's Auto, among other things. John, welcome back to the Metro.
Thanks so much.
So Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, spent last year driving a Shosu 7?
Xiaomi.
Go ahead. Yes, correct me, please.
Yeah, no, it's the name of the model is the company is Xiaomi, and it's the SU7, the SU7.
Thank you, the SU7. So Farley openly feared what might happen to Ford if more Americans can get behind the wheel of that Chinese vehicle. John, we've talked about the importance of Chinese automakers on our show before. But 2 weeks ago, Jim Farley openly framed Ford and every other car company as in a race against China. Do you agree with that?
Completely. I mean, look, the Chinese Communist government has made no bones about it. It wants its auto industry to dominate the world auto industry, and they're well on their way.
Okay, so now Ford's new approach is to build EVs a different way. It plans to start from scratch. A small team of former Tesla and Apple engineers working out of California designed the process. Here's Farley discussing the plan.
We looked at the past for innovation. We looked at the Model T and the flathead V8 that Mr. Ford installed in our cars in 32. These were times when Ford broke with tradition and broke the rules. And we made a leap forward. So back 3 years ago, we did something that no one really saw. We empowered a tiny skunkworks group of people in California, a tenth of the normal people we would hire to do this kind of work, 3 time zones away from Detroit. And we gave them the keys to the kingdom. We tore up the moving assembly line that you see here today, and we came up with a brand new concept, a brand new vehicle, and a better way of making a car after 122 years. We found a path to be the first automaker in the United States to make prismatic LFP battery cells here in the U.S. and not importing them from overseas.
Wow, so some high aspirations there. Is this a serious divergence from how Ford built cars in the past, even after already beginning to transition to making EVs?
Yeah, it is. In fact, I would say that what Ford's trying to do here may be the most radical development in automotive assembly since Ford essentially invented the moving assembly line to make cars. It's a very different way. It's extremely more efficient. Most people don't realize this. The moving assembly line is actually a very inefficient way of making things. And what the industry does to make up for that inefficiency is add more workstations in a plant and more workers. So the new way that Ford's going to do this will eliminate 40% of the workstations in the assembly plant and actually need 600 fewer people to make its cars. And that's a radical change from what we've seen.
So it wants to use an assembly tree with 3 branches where the vehicle's battery and major body parts converge to make the car with fewer parts required. What do you know about this process of making EVs? I mean, it sounds like you think it's a good one.
I do. And, explaining it as a tree and all that, it's kind of hard to get your head around it.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. They're chopping a vehicle into 3 pieces, a front section, a middle section, a rear section, or a module. The front module will have, the engine, the front suspension, the instrument panel, the steering wheel. The rear section will have the rear suspension, the tail lights, the trunk, or the lift gate. The middle section will have a battery pack that connects the other 2 together, and the seats and the carpeting, the console, and everything will be on that. So these modules will be assembled on separate lines, and then at the end, they all get joined together to have a vehicle. And it's actually an idea that Tesla has pioneered. I shouldn't say pioneered. Tesla has announced this system, but it looks like Ford's going to beat Tesla to the market. I also know that Toyota and in China, BYD are working on a similar program.
Interesting. Okay, that Ford is likely to beat Tesla on this. Now, Ford wants to sell this $30,000 truck that I mentioned earlier, and that's far cheaper than its F-150 Lightning Pro, which costs around $55,000. How much do you think this car will sell when it eventually comes to market?
Well, that remains to be seen. And what I think is going to happen is Ford's going to build more than just that pickup truck in that plant. The plant's being tooled to build around 200,000 vehicles a year. It's highly unlikely Ford's going to sell 200,000 of these mid-size pickups. And besides, this pickup's actually in size going to be probably more similar to the Ford Maverick. So, and it's about $30,000. So to be able to sell 200,000 of an electric pickup the same size of a Maverick, I think is highly unlikely. What I do think is likely is that Ford will probably build about 4, 5, potentially even 6 other electric vehicle models in that plant. A delivery van, a passenger van, a midsize crossover, a 3-row crossover, and with a lot of parts commonality between those so that they're all fairly inexpensive and it's fairly easy to do.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. My guest is auto expert and journalist John McElroy. We're discussing Ford's new plans to sell a cheaper electric vehicle and the race to outcompete China's EVs. Now, John, in May, Ford called it quits on a mega project to modernize its vehicle's computing systems. That was the so-called fully networked vehicle, which is estimated to have cost Ford $10 billion before it shut down the project in the spring. Now, we spoke about this project last time we had you on the show. But, John, I'm wondering what you think the odds are of Ford actually succeeding in transitioning how it builds electric vehicles and producing a car that's much cheaper than its current ones.
I'm sure they're going to have teething problems getting this thing up and running as smoothly as it's going to need to be. But I also think it's absolutely necessary. The legacy ways, the old ways of competing just aren't going to hack it anymore. When you look at startups like Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, when you look at what the leading Chinese companies are doing, there's no way a legacy automaker can keep up with them, which is why Ford's doing exactly what it's done and why this was developed outside of the legacy system. They're doing this in California. They've hired a lot of people out of Silicon Valley. In fact, they've hired a lot of experts from around the world to work on this program. If it doesn't work, doesn't bode well for the future of the company. So I think they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that it does work.
John, let's spin the globe if we could and set our sights on China for a second. 2 other EV companies in America are competing in the EV market, and neither is named Tesla. Slate cars sell for under $20,000, and Rivian is becoming more popular despite selling more expensive cars. First, what do you make of Slate cars and the company's future?
Well, Slate's very interesting, and I love the fact that the whole thing was developed here in Metro Detroit. It's amazing to me. They're not on sale yet. They'll go on sale next year. The price will actually be more like $27,000 because that sub-$20,000 price tag they were talking about was dependent on federal subsidies, the $7,500 that, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Robin, is going away. And so Slate has also approached, how do you get the cost out of a vehicle from a very unique way? For example, the body will not be painted. Instead, owners will be able to buy different wraps, different colors, different patterns, whatever they want to personalize their vehicle. And, it's not going to have a center screen. It's going to have a mounting spot that you can either put your smartphone or even an iPad there. It's going to have crank windows. So what they've gone for is a very bare bones basic approach to taking cost out. Also, the way that their product development process is working is very efficient. So I laud them, but I think they need more than just the little pickup that they're talking about. And you can put a cap on the back of the bed of the pickup and convert it into an SUV, put a seat in the back. But they're tooling their plant for about 140,000 vehicles a year. I think it's mighty ambitious to try to sell a little pickup / crossover vehicle at that volume. I think they're going to need more than just those products.
Okay, so Slate needs to diversify its offerings. What do you make of Rivian, and do you anticipate the company unveiling a cheaper EV in the near future to compete with Ford?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rivian makes no bones about it. They're going to have what they call their R2. Right now, what they have on the street is the R1, both a pickup truck and an SUV. They're going to have a smaller, much less expensive, still kind of pricey. It'll probably be in the $50,000 range. And then they have a subsequent model coming after that will be smaller and less expensive, too. Right now, Rivian is in a race, a cash burn race. It's got, last I looked, I think they've got about $7 billion of cash on hand, but they're burning through it very quickly. So they need to get these new products out. Those products need to be successful, or else the company's simply going to run out of money.
And now, John, the overarching thing here is that right now the American car industry is insulated from China at home because of tariffs. China can't sell its cars here, but some analysts believe that soon companies like BYD will be building and distributing their vehicles here. How likely do you think that is to happen?
I don't think it's likely anytime soon. I think there's a recognition that, look, if the Chinese were given free rein to the American market, they would take a huge chunk of it. They have a government policy, government strategy to dominate the global automotive industry. Keep in mind that almost every Chinese car company loses money. There's about a handful that make a profit, only one that makes a decent profit. The others have very low levels of profitability, but it doesn't matter because they keep getting supported by either the national government or regional governments, because the way the Chinese look at the auto industry is as a job generator. That's one of the reasons why any country loves to have an auto industry. It generates so many jobs at so many socioeconomic levels, and the ripple effect through the economy is enormous. For every direct automotive job, there's something like 7 to 8 other jobs created in the economy. Same is true in China. And so they put a policy in place that they just want to steamroll everybody else out of their way.
So the idea is to just flood the market and hope that they take over and eventually they'll make a profit. They don't need
exactly
to
right.
now.
Exactly right.
Huh. Okay. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, as always. John McElroy, who broadcasts 3 radio segments on WWJ, writes a blog for Autoblog and has a monthly column for Ward's Auto, among other things. John, always so nice to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks, Robin.
Up next, in Northville, outdoor dining and seasonal road closures turned streets into pedestrian plazas. Now, a pair of lawsuits could end all that. It's a battle of cars versus community in the Motor City suburbs. And it has us wondering, what do you think? Should cities close streets in favor of walkable public spaces? The phone lines are open, 313-577-1019. We'll be right back here on the Metro. Stay with us.